Right, Mark. Problem two. We called it the Mudball in our last interview, but what we're really talking about is monolithic architecture. So when we encounter that, and you'll have encountered that hundreds of times in your career, what's the answer?
So you have to just one answer to rule them all. I think you're going to struggle with that, because I think that this is part of the problem. There's a lot of documentation on theory to say almost monoliths were the way things were used to be done. Microservices is the way you should do it now. And unfortunately, it's kind of not as simple as that. And what do we mean by monolith in essence? Well, it means that all of the logic is in one place, is running together, is all dependencies are being brought into the application. And a microservices architecture is striving to break that up so that things that, struggle being dependent on each other aren't dependent on each other. So things that need to scale can scale, things that need to be fully secure and that's the primary goal can be that. Things where one business unit wants to drive some change over here can be separated out from some regulatory requirements over here. So it's not as simple as saying, well, take that application and break it down to all of its smaller parts. I've actually seen one of the things that I see with many, many different clients and even with, kind of staff that have at times joined GW is they start having a discussion about how big should a service be in the microservices architecture. And I would tell you that I've heard so many paths through that discussion, and I'll give you the answer to that always ends up, and it's, with any architecture solution, the answer is normally it depends. Well, with this question, it's as big as it needs to be. That's what they all end up with, right? So they kind of forget that this is an architecture style. It's a way of saying, don't have all of your logic and processes and user interaction and data storage and security policies all built into one software unit. Break it up so that things can change independently, right? Which has always been good practice in my view, the idea of modular programming and then service-oriented architecture. This is just an extension of that. So also don't rely on large, integration platforms, run something that as a service that can run standalone, and it's been enabled a lot more with sort of the great cloud technologies and cloud platforms that are in place that you can break your solutions down more. But it shouldn't mean you should break everything down to the smallest part. There's always a trade-off. You see that I think it was Amazon Prime in the press fairly recently that tried to break down their service into fairly small, microservices, and ended up bringing things back together for performance reasons or for reducing the cost of support. So, but that doesn't mean microservices is bad and monoliths are great. So once you understand it's not just a formula, take this and break it down in this way, the question comes of, right, how do you break down this monolith then? How do you actually look at your application and say, how should it be structured for taking us forward for all the business change that's needed now? And I would say a couple of the success factors there is, remember, this is a kind of a physical architecture, microservices, it's a concept, it's an architecture style. So really understand, first of all, how you would want your future state architecture to be structured to meet the business change that's coming. So first of all, start with your business domains, right? And think about, are we mixing things together? Have we got units of code that are trying to satisfy one business area as well as another business area and driving it together, right? So we always kind of start with trying to get a domain-driven design approach of what does your business really look like? Ideally, your software should map onto your business at the highest level. Each of the parts of the solution, each of the services should have clear purpose, but for each of the areas should have ownership, should have product ownership within that. So that's the first thing, to try and structure it in that way. But then don't just stop there and don't result then in a really chatty architecture. You know, if there really is two business areas that work closely together, start considering those together and see what they should share and see where they should get shared services. And also, don't just design your services to meet what your customer requirements are and what your business domains are. At the end of the day, the software that you're building needs to run, needs to scale, needs to be secured, that meets all of your more what we call asset ownership and operational readiness elements. So because you want to get a service that will give you, kind of one of your orders and another requirement for something that gives you your whole history of orders across all of your client base, from a business point of view, it might have the same business owner, but those are two very different requirements for the infrastructure and for the running of that solution. So maybe share the definitions of what an order looks like, but implement that as two different services. So we have a series of steps that we go through when we're assessing, does that architecture meet what your business and operational needs are? And it's a staged approach of looking at it from the business, looking at it from all of the kind of the non-functional requirements and the success factors of meeting future growth and scale, and then look at it from a support and operational management point of view. And it's all of these things together that will come up with kind of your ideal sort of future state architecture. And then the one rule is that will change. So you've got to build it to adopt over time as your business changes or as you learn how your consumers are using your system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and fits in again with what we talk about time and time again. Pace of play, innovation, and changing of technology. You're set up for all of those three things, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. And if you are tied to dependencies that are stopping you from implementing business change, then there's a problem with your architecture. You need to reconsider that, and you need to really think about how to solve that base problem before you can go and, really reap the benefits of the solution.